Okay, today the class is July 17. The title is Assuming the End. Assuming the End. And it is class number 863. The foundation scripture is Revelation 22, verse 13. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. I want to start by saying that last night I was all over the place. In a good way, but sometimes when you got too much, it's spilling over, and your thoughts are just flying all over the place. And I'm just trying to narrow it in and get the right title and the right foundational scripture. And I didn't have any of that last night. I just had all of my notes from during the week. And so I just assumed it would be all right. I said, I'm just going to go on to bed. I'm going to assume that it's going to be all right. I went to bed. And of course, you know that if you know your clock is going to wake you up at 8 o'clock, most of the time you're going to wake up before the 8 o'clock. Somewhere in the vicinity of 7:30. And so I woke up, and then I just said, well, I just might as well stay up. So I started reading over my notes again, and a fresh flow just started to pour out, and I started taking notes. And I'm just taking the notes, not paying attention to the fact that last night I said, I'm just going to assume everything's going to be all right. So I started taking out my notes and writing down notes. And then when I got finished, and it was somewhere around 8:30, I said, well, I know I'm just going to go out here. I'm going to get me some cereal and, get me a cup of coffee. And on the way to the refrigerator, a little voice went off in my head and said, assuming the end. You assume the end. And I said, oh, that's the title. That's going to be my title, too, because when you assume the end, then there's nothing else. And it was like, well, yeah, I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. I am the beginning and I am the end. And Kenny and I have been talking 2 or 3 times during the week about principle. Principle. And a principle just does not change. And so then the Greek word for in the beginning is principia, which is principle. So the principle of creation does not change, and creation is absolutely complete. There's nothing else. You can't add anything to it. And I told him, I said, and ever since that Ecclesiastes 3, 14 and 15 has started to live his life as me. You can't add to it, you can't take away, and that which is to be has already been, and that which has been is now. And so I'm thinking about all of that, and I said, excuse me. I said, well, yeah, the principle doesn't change. And he gave me an example where he said that he said that you take a little kid, ask a little kid, how old are you? I got some dust from somewhere, paper dust. And he said, how old are you? And the little kid says 4. And you say, well, does he know how to get to 4? Oh boy, this paper is trying to. I'm just going to assume that it's going to be all right. This sneezing is driving me nuts. And he said, I'm going to. He said he doesn't know how he got the 4. I said, yeah, you're right. I said it's a little while before, you know, he learns how to put up 4 fingers and go 1, 2, 3, 4. So, yeah, that's. But the principle didn't change. It's still 4, even though you can get there by way of 2 times 2, 3 plus 1, 5 minus 1, 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. I mean, that's just you can get the 4 a million different ways. However, you have to know how to do it. What did the man say? If a man lack wisdom, let him ask God, who gives to everyone. Wisdom is the ability to apply knowledge. So if I know 2 times 2 is 4, but I don't know how to do it, then I'm going to need what it says about Jesus in Luke 2 and 40, where it says, and the child grew and waxed strong in wisdom, knowledge, and intelligence. And the grace of God was upon him. So in other words, you can learn how to do something. You can learn what that something is. You can be intelligent and intelligently articulated. However, without the ability to do it, there is no grace. And the grace causes you to have the ability to apply the knowledge intelligently. Therefore, you can speak the word, which was the beginning, which is the principle. You speak the word understanding that it has to obey you because you are the divine principle. So you can just assume that everything is all right and what you need is going to come into your experience because you have the ability to understand that if I apply this knowledge, it already has happened. Let me say that again. It has already happened because that's what it says in Ecclesiastes. And in Ecclesiastes, the preacher, Solomon, was supposedly at the time the most wise man that ever lived. So that is what we're talking about here. Assuming the end means you have an ability to assume the end. But if you don't have the ability, then you don't have the grace. And if you don't have the grace, you're just talking. You're just saying stuff, which was the foundation of the, what do we call it? The full gospel church back in the day, where they were making all these confessions, affirmations, saying all this stuff, and none of it ever happening. You know why it never happened when they were making all these statements and these affirmations and these confessions? And the reason why it never happened? It never happened because they didn't understand that it had already happened. Faith is the expectant assurance. You are assured that this thing has already happened, so therefore you know that it was the substance of that which is already in existence. Where is it in existence? In you. And because it's in existence in you, it expresses itself out here. That's why the allegorical story of Adam and Eve is so important. See, if you assume evil, it's going to come into your experience because you understand how it comes into your experience. You know, somebody might come over here and this person is ding, 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 ding. Or you say things that you don't really know. But because you've read it somewhere and you heard other people say things and say you have an opinion about something and you assume that it's correct, you're enacting a law, and what you're doing is you're saying, I accept it. So it's going to come into your experience. That's why when you say, I accept $1 million, and it doesn't come into your experience, it's because you don't understand that it's already there, because wealth and riches will be in your house. So it doesn't matter how much. The number doesn't have anything to do with the grace the intelligence, the knowledge, and the wisdom. The outpicturing is nothing more than something that got mirrored from what you understand. Now, okay, we understand all of that. So the next thing that happened to me this morning after all of that, and I totally understand all that. All of that didn't happen this morning. It's just all of that came together as a result of me realizing what it means to assume the best, to assume that which is right, to assume the good, to assume the end. So I already knew, but now, let me show you an outer picture that happens as a result of me doing that. I go over to my TV and I said, well, I'm going to eat my cereal, I'm going to drink my coffee, and maybe I'll just, cut the TV on and let it keep me company here for a few minutes. And so then you start scrolling down, and what are you looking at? A bunch of stuff you don't want to see, particularly stuff that is just, killings and mass murders and all of these people who just got locked up, news shows and all that. So you said, I don't see that. So the idea comes, why don't you hop over to your HBOs? I said, yeah, I get that free because I'm not paying for no stars and all that kind of stuff. It's just, to me, it's wasting money to look at something you don't want to see nowhere. So I go to the HBOs, and they got this documentary on over there called The Pieces I Am. And it was about Toni Morrison. So I said, oh, wow, I'm going to go and check out Toni Morrison. That's, I like her anyway. So I'm sitting there listening, and some of the stuff that she said was amazing. It was right in line with where I'm thinking. Toni Morrison was, they brought her, I'll just give you a couple examples. They brought her to this big gathering that they had. It was all kinds of people in that audience. I mean, all kinds. And there were various languages. People of Hispanic origin and people of other origins and, different languages. And they came out. And so she said, do you want me to bring, no, the producer of the project said, do you want us to bring a translator? We'll bring a translator out so, everybody can understand. And you should have heard all of these people say no. And they were wondering why they said no. And this one lady said, no, we understand. We understand because there's a feeling that comes with what she's saying. I'm like, oh, wow. That gives a new twist to when the Holy Ghost fell and they all heard everything in their own language. I had never heard of anything like that until this morning when these people said, no, she can just go ahead and read and she can talk. We understand. This is what one lady said, but we got people in there that only spoke Spanish, and they were understanding because they felt what she was saying. I went, oh, wow, that's amazing. I remember a person told me one time, Michael Orr, when you sing, there's something in your voice. I feel it. I can just, I know it's like, it's unbelievable, but I can't explain it, but it takes me somewhere. I'm like, okay, I thought I was just singing some songs, I saw it a couple of weeks ago when I sang at the retirement center where Carolyn lives. People were like, they were getting it, and this one guy was from Trinidad. And he was standing there and we were having a conversation and he was like, oh, so how did you get this thing that you have? I'm like, I don't know. It was just there, man. It's just there. And everybody, all of you and everybody all over the world, they all have this particular gift, which is called grace. And it causes you to be able to communicate with everybody, and if they're tuned in, they feel it. And if they feel it, they understand it. And because God does not have any one specific person that he he blesses, and then everybody got to come to that person. Because if you were depending on trying to come to Jesus and have him do things for you, I don't think that's going to happen because he's gone. And he came back already, and he ain't coming no more. That's why Paul said, don't you know that Jesus Christ lives in you? I said this to Kenny yesterday. I said, if Jesus Christ lives in you, how would you be able to know? Except for your imagination. You would only be able to imagine Jesus Christ living in you. Well, what would you be for Jesus Christ to live in you except consciousness? Your awareness. I am that. I am Jesus Christ living in me because I am light. I am the Lord thy God. And the other thing was when Toni Morrison was just saying, I was just, how did she say this? She said, I couldn't stay. I don't remember whether she was still at Howard or where she was, but she couldn't stay any longer as a teacher because they asked her why. She said, I didn't have a PhD. So she left. She saw an advertisement looking for an editor. She was a writer, but she saw a job as an editor. And the job asked for a master's degree or a PhD if possible. And it asked for, articulation and all this kind of stuff. But then it had one other thing down there that blew my mind. They wanted her to be imaginative, to have imagination. And she said, know what she said? That sounds like me. And she just assumed that it was okay. And so she went to Syracuse, New York. And while she was up there, she was working as an editor. And then things started to really roll. And they decided to move everybody to New York City, the people that they wanted to take with them. She said, and they chose me to go with them. Now, we're talking way back, like 1965, okay? And she had written something, I forget what it was, and the people, the person who was her best friend, this white guy who was an editor, and he said, y'all need to be looking at what Toni Morrison writes because this is amazing. And she said that the person came to this guy who said this about her and said, we need to be publishing what she writes. This is amazing. We need to be publishing what Toni Morrison is writing. And you know the rest is history. She went on to write all kinds of books. And so I wrote this note right after I made that one. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. Assumption is the assurance. It's the expectancy that the substance of that which you expect exists right now. And where does it exist? In you, in your mind. When you assume that that which is to be has already been and that which has been is now, you have just assumed all that is good. So the allegorical Adam and Eve that assumed that there was a tree of knowledge of good and evil, now, think about it. Genesis 1, there is no tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Genesis 2, there is no tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Genesis 3, now we get a serpent. Where did it come from? Have you ever been in a situation where you said, man, things are really going well? At some particular point, it's got to go left. It's got to go wrong. You assume that it is going the wrong way at some point because it's been going well too long. Here these guys are in the garden, and you start dealing with a tree that God didn't make. Well, who made the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? the consciousness of the carnal man. Let us make man. Okay, let man have dominion. Okay, who is the us? You. And you have done what? You expressed man in your image and likeness to commune with. And then what happens? Man decides on his own, I think I can do this. And that's when it starts to go left. I'm assuming that something is going to go wrong. It will. What is that? The law of Murphy's Law? If something can go wrong, it will. That's what you're dealing with. So consciousness has done as it has promised. It has given and it has received. Now, as you assume and feel this, as you assume as if the thing that you want already is yours, you will be given the way to the expression of that which you desire. So, if I am Alpha and I am Omega, and we look at John 1, in the beginning was the Word. Now, that word is again the beginning, which we said in Greek was principial. So, in the beginning was the Word. What word? I am. I am that word. I am consciousness. Now, in Jeremiah 18, verse 2 through 4, I'm just going to summarize it, okay? Because I've used a bit of time here bringing this to an understanding. So he's talking about there's the potter. And the potter is doing what? He's molding something into an image. And he's molding that image out of clay. It says, we are the clay, and God is the potter. That means consciousness is the potter, and your outer self, that which you use to put in different places and speak and hear and eat and drink and all of that, you're molding that person into your image and likeness, that which you can commune with to share your gifts through. Now, this potter, if you look up potter, if you Google potter, the Hebrew word for it is Yetzar, Y-A-T-S-A-R, or Yetzer, Y-E-T-S-E-R. And it means imagination. So, to fashion in mind before forming something in time and space. You fashion in mind that which is going to express itself in time and space. That's why Jesus said in John 8, before Abraham was, I am. Think about that. So, I am the beginning and I am the end, because I have fashioned as a potter. Consciousness, that which I am, that is the potter. And when you have a potter and they're sitting there with clay, what they're doing is getting rid of everything that they don't need so that the image that they desire can come forth. That's amazing, isn't it? In other words, I am not. You ever notice they don't take that whole piece of clay? They cut away. They cut away that which they don't need. Now, that's a deep revelation. I cut away that which I don't need. Have you cut away the carnal man? Because you don't need it. Because it believes in good and evil. You have to cut away sickness, disease, lack, poverty. You have to cut away opinions that are aimed at people that do not produce love your neighbor as yourself, love God more than anything. quit assuming that somebody is going to be difficult to deal with. When I started doing that, things started to ease up. And you'd be surprised how quickly they ease up. Now, if I know that before Abraham I am, before the forming of Abraham I am, before the forming of my experiences I am, the next thing that I'm going to realize is 1 John 1 through 5. I mean, 1 John 1, verse 5. God is light, in whom there is no darkness. Now, Jesus turns around and says, I am the light. And then he says, you are the light. So it stands to reason that there's no darkness in you. Your consciousness has no darkness. You have to bring it in there. And it's not the Christ consciousness, that's bringing that darkness in there, because no darkness is in the light. So what's bringing the darkness? The carnal mind, assuming that I also have this mind that can do evil. Assuming that I also have a mind that can be sick, that can be hurt, that can wound, that can do a lot of different things that are considered not palatable, inharmonious things, create disharmony. That's the carnal mind, and that I have nothing to do with that. So when things start, as we used to say when we were a lot young, when we start tripping, we know that has nothing to do with who I am. I am not tripping. So, if I am light, now let's look at John 1, verse 4. In him was life, and that light was the life of men. In him was life, and that light is the life of men. It is the light that lights every man. That means no gender. It is the light that lights mankind. So, of course, Michael Orr, I'm just cut a certain kind of way, I said, well, let me Google what light has to do with photography. Because we're talking about image and likeness. We're talking about imagination. We're talking about, yet sort of potter. So I am carving out of my thoughts the experiences I want to have, and I'm cutting away and getting rid of all of that I don't need. So I said, okay, so what does light have to do with photography? And it says, light captures the image. It captures the image. So light gives me as a potter, forming images in mind and in time and space, it gives me this power to do that. That's the power of imagination. You see, I can't just go read something by Neville Goddard and go, okay, this is, no, I got to understand how it works. And once I understand how it works, I can assume that it has worked already. Now, isn't that wonderful? I realize that if I understand that it has worked already, that means I've received the grace of God. And because I have the grace, it means that, like the child in Luke 2 and 40, I have waxed grown in wisdom, knowledge, and intelligence, and the grace of God is upon me. The ability to understand. I understand that every time I assume that everything is all right, it means I understand why they're all right. Why? Because it was always all right. It was finished before I started. So that, I'm looking at that and I'm saying, I am consciousness, I am imagination, and I am imagining only the good. I am imagining everything in line with the 2 commandments. I love the Lord my God with all my heart, my mind, and my soul. Well, that's my consciousness. And I love my neighbor as myself. Well, my neighbor is the same consciousness. The 2 are one. So now, thanks to Greg Braden, I'm realizing, the 2 have made peace in the house. My heart feels what my mind says. And those 2 agree, and it means I can speak and expect that which has already been to be. Okay, yeah. In other words, let me just say this: Jesus was working backwards. Jesus was working with what had already been. He was just bringing it forth. He was the potter, and he was taking the clay of all good, of all love, of all power, and he was bringing it forth because it had already been. So now we go and let's do some practicals and understand how we get to this part. In Exodus 23:20, Moses is there, and he gets this word. I have given you an angel to keep you in the way and to bring you into the place that I have prepared for you. Oh, wow. I have already prepared a place for you. Remember, we talked about this last week. You see, the I is imagination. And the I, if I assume that that place is already prepared for me, then in Isaiah 45, verse 2, he says, I, the presence, the imagination, the feeling of it's all right, I go before you to make the crooked places straight. What? Yeah, you're going to meet some crooked places on your way to where you're going, but they're going to be straight by the time. They're going to automatically straighten out because they are already straight. Now, Thomas Troward said, having seen and felt the end, one wills the means to the end. So you don't have to care about how you got to where it is that you already are. You just have to understand that that's where you are, and you understand how you're there because your imagination has already provided you with the feeling of it's all right. And because you feel like it's all right, you are convinced. Well, why? Well, you didn't have to work at convincing yourself. You are consciousness, the awareness of God. And because you are the awareness of God, you just learn to grow knowing you expect everything to be all right. Why? Because it's already all right. Before the foundations of the world, I am. Before Abraham was, I am. I was already all right. I'm quite sure there are a whole lot of little babies that were saying, I was all right till I came out of that womb. Now I get out here and what am I dealing with? Craziness. So, if I've already felt the end, I've already seen it, let's tap Lillian DeWaters now, because if your head reads where Lillian DeWaters says, just make a wish. What? I can just make a wish and everything's okay? Yeah. How can I do that? Most people don't understand that you can make a wish and the thing will express itself in your outer experience because it has already expressed. That's the attitude you got to come with. Now, you make a wish, and then you start to enact all of the stuff that causes it to come to pass. Now, what does that mean? Well, as I say these things, just think about what I'm saying and think about some things that you would like. Okay. You'll make a wish. I wish, you fill out the dots at the end. Well, what does it look like? The thing that you just wished, what does it look like? What does it feel like? How does it make me feel to have it? Well, I already have it. What does it look like? I was talking to a girl yesterday, and she had lost something. And I said, okay, well, what does it look like? She said, what do you mean? I said, just go back in your memory and ask yourself, what does it look like? Well, yeah, I know exactly what it looks like. Okay. Then feel like you know what it looks like and feel that it's yours and feel that you already have it. She said, I've never looked at it like that. I said, that's what your memory is for. I said, go back into your life experiences and look at the stuff that happened in your life and you didn't like it, you didn't want it, and you wish to never experience it again. Just get rid of that. But go back into your life experience and think about the things that you really enjoyed. You really loved it. You just really, really felt real good about that stuff. She said, I've never looked at it like, I've never. I said, I know. I said, that's not what the church teaches. The church got you looking for something to happen. God, your consciousness, your imagination, your awareness of the truth has you looking for that which has already happened, and you're just looking to bring forth what? The baby, the son. You're just imagining how it feels to know that you already have what it is that you wished for. You made a wish, and the wish you made was for something that you already had. That's how that lady said, I wish for some fruit. I don't have enough money to buy it. However, wait a minute. Where is that fruit that I saw in that window in that store? Well, that fruit's in me. The fruit that I want is in me. Remember last week I said it's like you walked into a pantry and you saw all of these delicacies. You have a pantry, your consciousness, which you are, which has everything in it that is necessary for you to fulfill your outer experience. That's where you should be looking. You should imagine those things that have already happened. Don't imagine something happening. Imagine those things which have already happened. So you made that wish and you realize what it feels like. You've seen the end. The end is what it looks like. It looks like you. It looks like consciousness. It's the imagination. So creation is complete. Why? Because that which I'm seeking, I am. I heard Goldsmith say, I said, how could he do that? That which I'm seeking, I am. Well, then I realized if I am light and everything is light, and that light and life are the same thing, then the thing I'm looking for is light. But the light already exists in me. It's light. So therefore, I am resting. Remember in Psalm 37, it says, rest in the Lord. That's what you're doing. You're resting in the law that all things already are. God rested on the seventh day. What does that mean? Well, you don't know what God looks like. So all you can do is imagine yourself resting because you have realized the truth that all things already exist. There's no way for them not to exist because creation is complete. Now, this is how you have to conclude. There is no other way to do this. You have to come to that. There is no other way. There is no running around out here looking for somebody to connect with, to be able to. If you're looking for somebody to connect with, it means you're already connected. That's what Toni Morrison said. That sounds like me. What? This description of the job that needs to be filled, that sounds like me. That ended it for everybody else that was going to apply for that job, didn't it? That sounds like me. So, I take it. I accept it. I am that. Why? It's light. I am light. But what about all of the other people that wanted it? They could not bring to it the understanding that you have because you have grown in wisdom, that's the ability, and knowledge and intelligence. That's the word, the law, and the grace of God is upon you because this is your expression. You're not taking anything from somebody else. You're just expressing what you are in that manner. It's just that they had no way of knowing how to find you. So they advertised and you said, that looks like me. There is no other way. I am that. I must be that which I desired, ED. What things soever you desire. The word desire also means of the Father. Those things that are of the Father. Who is the Father? Consciousness. Universal, infinite consciousness, and I am the Son, which is one with that Father. So I am the Father and I am the Son. Now, the thing that is of the Father, when you pray, that word slaughter, Aramaic, it means you are trapping that idea. How are you trapping it? You are the light, and you are getting in agreement with the light of the idea, and it is looking to express in your experience. You have to believe that you already have it. You believe you receive when you pray, when you trap. If you trap something, don't you already have it? Actually, you trapped it before it got trapped, because that is your attitude. All things are yours. It's already there. Okay. So I need to be the way. I don't have a need for a personal something. I need to be the way. I am the way. I need to know that I am the truth. Consciousness. You know, I direct me. I go before you to prepare a place, and then I come back and get you and bring you to the place where I am. What is that? What does that mean? Consciousness, the angel, the one with God. I go and prepare a place. Then I'm going to come back and get who? I'm going to come back and get Michael. Once I come back and get Michael, I'm going to bring Michael to experience that place that I prepared for him. It was prepared before the foundations of the world. This is the life that I am. I am the one who received before I experienced on the outside. But what if my dreams seem to be dead? Dormant, which is what we're talking about when we say dead. My dreams seem to be dormant. See, you got dreams that you've had since before eons ago. I don't care how old you are. I remember back in 78. This preacher told me it's going, God, he went off to, I don't know, and he looked at me and he said that it's going to take over 40 years for you to come into what it is. You play music and you sing, but God got you on the plan. He had a me and a God. And it's going to take you about over 40 years to bring you to that place. Well, in 1978, I was 29. I was 29 years old. 40 years later, I'm 68. No, sorry. I was 20. How old was I? 20. I was born in 49. In 78, I was 29. So I'm 69 years old. Good God. I said, man, this man must be crazy. I ain't going to wait that long to be no rock star. Yeah, I'm 69 and it still ain't happening. Now I'm 76. 7 years later. And the only thing that I was waiting to come into was what? The consciousness that I already am, that I always was what I was supposed to be. I can never not be what I was supposed to be. I always have been. And the only thing that changed about me was my concept of myself. I quit being Michael, and I realized I am. Before Michael, I am. He says, before Abraham was, I am. You look at yourself and say, before and whatever your name is, and however you see yourself, I am precedes that. So what dreams seem to be dormant? Well, I realized they've already happened. So I'm through trying to get things to be the way I want them to be. Because Jesus said, do what? Raise the dead. How do you raise the dead? By realizing they already up. By realizing that which appears to be dead is already alive. Let's see. I am he. I thought I wrote this scripture down. It's in Isaiah, somewhere around 42. I don't remember it. But it says, I am he. And except you believe that I am he, you will die in your sins. What does that mean? You'll be lying dormant in the mistake that you don't understand that you are the light, which is the life, which is the experience that expresses itself. That's why in Luke 12, he said, take no thought for your life. I said this to Kenny the other day. When was the last time you saw flowers asking, please give me some sunshine? Please give me some. Flowers don't ask anything. Birds just show up and peck and eat. That's it. Jesus said, eat of my flesh and drink of my blood. Just show up and eat. Eat what? That which has already been provided in mind. I am the supply. I am the true vine. What? Yeah, I've already expressed love, joy, peace, faith, patience, kindness, meekness, goodness, self-control. I already expressed that. That's already who I am. The vine is always expressing itself, its own fruit. Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. What is the Lord? My consciousness, my conscious awareness of the truth that I am. Isaiah 42, I am the Lord, that is my name. My glory will I not give to another. I'm not going to share my praise with graven images. In other words, there's nothing out here that can make me who I am. I am what makes that out here. Isn't that wonderful? I am that which makes that out here. That out here does not make me who I am. I have set before you an open door that no man can close. I am the door. Whatever needs to happen, whatever appears to need to happen out here, it was a crooked place. And he said, I went before you to make the crooked places straight. I am the end. If I'm always looking at the end, I have nothing to try to bring to the end. I'm always looking at the end. I realize that. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. There is nothing that I need to do except stay aware of that which I am, that which has already happened. The gift of God, the grace of God was upon him because he grew in wisdom, knowledge, and intelligence. And that wisdom, knowledge, and intelligence that was upon him is in you because Jesus Christ is also in you. Jesus Christ dwells in you. That is the consciousness. That is the Christ. I am the way, the truth, and the life. And that life is the light that lighteth every man. I am Alpha and Omega. It is finished. Creation is complete. I'm just picking off the shelf in the pantry. Amen. And so it is.